Does this seem familiar to you?
You're all inspired, you've got yourself a new tab, it's really exciting, you even start dreaming about how great it's going to be. All fired up, you start getting stuck in and playing. However, you then realise it's a lot harder than you thought, and there the dream ends.
Well, that certainly seemed familiar to me. Years ago when I was younger, back in the days before you could download Tab off the internet, you used to buy books. I've got Tab, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Mark Knopfler, magazines. I've got Total Guitar magazine here. I've got absolutely loads of these. That one, first one I bought, January 1995. That is 28 years ago. So in 28 years, if I'd learned all these tabs and all these books, I'd be an amazing guitarist now with a huge repertoire. But to be honest, I'm not. Every time I used to sit down and learn a new tab, I'd be really excited, thinking it was going to be really cool, and then I'd give up. I would never finish them. I would lose the motivation, and they always came to nothing. And to be honest, it's probably the main reason why I gave up playing electric guitar years ago, and I got much more into acoustic playing. But more recently, I found the electric guitar again, and I've also found much better and more successful ways of learning tab. So let's have a look today at what we can do to improve the tab learning experience. So number one on my list is pick a tab that you stand a good chance of being able to do. Know your capabilities, know your abilities, and pick something that you know you can make good progress with. So for example, Eruption by Eddie Van Halen, probably not a good choice if you're a beginner or intermediate guitarist. To be honest, probably if you're an advanced guitarist, you might find that one quite challenging. So pick something that you know you can do, and also give yourself a reason for playing it as well. That's a really great motivator. For example, if you're in a band, that's the most obvious choice. Learning a piece of music, reading and learning tab for a solo is great for your band and probably necessary as well. But if you're not in a band, then give yourself another reason. Is it something that you want to perform for friends or family? Are you learning it on the acoustic guitar? Perhaps you could, give yourself an aim to learn the song, learn the solo, whatever it might be, and then perform it at an open mic or something along those sorts of lines. Just learning a solo or just learning a piece of music because you think it sounds cool, and for no other reason at all. Personally, for me, I've never found that successful. It's always been the pieces of music that have had a purpose, that I'm going to use them in some shape or form, that I've found that I will stick with and learn and give myself the best chance of success. My next piece of advice is get yourself good quality tab. There's nothing worse than learning incorrect tab, and that's just going to set yourself up for a fall. You're going to learn incorrect tab and have errors that you'll build into your playing from the outset. That's really bad. So make sure that you get good quality tab. My best advice is to get yourself a copy of Guitar Pro, which is software for guitarists and for guitar tab. But the great thing about Guitar Pro is it actually outputs in music notation format, and also it's a player as well. So when you've got the software, you can download your tab off the internet and then actually play the music, and that way gives you a good indication that the music's correct. So for example, here's a bit of tab here that I printed out. It's a solo that I'm working on at the moment. The reason why I'm working on this particular solo is I've always loved Dire Straits. When I was a kid, it was music that I was really into. But also for this particular solo, the reason why I'm learning it is because there's some really nice, nuanced, dynamic playing in there, which I want to practice. And there's also a couple of quite cool licks in there as well, which I want to pull out and have in my sort of repertoire, really, that I can use in other stuff, in my own playing, in my own improvisation or jamming or whatever it might be. But anyway, I digress. So this music you'll see is like in proper music notation format. I'm not a fan, and I don't recommend that you try and learn music from the ASCII character format. And now there's a lot of that on the internet, and a lot of it might be really useful perhaps. But if you're learning, a fairly lengthy or complex piece of music, learning from that style of tab you're going to struggle. Well, I for me, I would struggle because it doesn't have the timing marks on there indicated very clearly. Also, when you print it out, it doesn't print out. It spills over onto the wrong page format and so on. It's just it's untidy. This kind of tab is ideal, and also you can still buy, of course, tab off the internet in books. You know, like I showed earlier. So you could still go to Amazon or wherever it might be and buy yourself tab from books. Or there are also sites where you can download and purchase PDF tab that's fully licensed, correctly published, and accurate. So get yourself good quality tab. My third piece of advice is don't start yet. Now, this is a mistake, and what I've made this mistake so many times in the past. When I was younger, I'd get my tab and I would start playing straight away, and I would start wanting to get stuck in, and then I would be rushing, and I would find that my fingers would be going into the wrong place. But once I've started playing, it's very hard to then start unlearning the stuff that, very hard to start it's very hard to unlearn the positions that you started putting your fingers in. So be careful. Don't start playing until you've had a thorough, good look at the tab. So that now brings me on to my fourth piece of advice is, once you've got your tab, go through it slowly, have a good look through, perhaps play the piece of music and follow it through bar by bar on the tab and start looking at what the music consists of. And you'll find, or I find, that generally speaking, there's kind of three things that you'll find. You'll find riffs in there, so identify what the riffs are. You'll find that there'll be licks in there. When the original composer, whoever it is, wrote that piece of music, like all guitarists, they had some licks, some fancy licks that were in their back pocket, and they incorporated them into that piece of music, probably. Or they made up some licks and they thought, oh, that's good, I'm going to use that in this piece of music. So you'll find there'll be distinguishable little chunks of music in that solo or whatever it might be that'll be licks. Try and find those, and we'll come back to that in a minute as to why. So riffs, licks. You'll then have what I would call little motifs. So they are the little pieces of music. They're not really as big as, say, as a lick or riff, but they're little repeating patterns of music that give that piece of music or give that solo its identity. A good composer, a good soloist will deliberately put in little repeating ideas that they come back to. So try and find those, because again, having an understanding of those repeating ideas will help you in terms of understanding that piece of music. And that's it really. There'll also be then just the kind of the joining and connecting notes really that kind of connect the piece of music together. And I suppose really I'm talking about learning a solo when it comes to this video. Obviously you've got the broader tab, the song structure and the chords and so on. Really I'm talking about in this context learning a solo. So just to summarize that then, look at the piece of music, identify the riffs, the licks, the motifs, and then the joining connections, okay? And start making some marks on the tab. So ideally, if you've got some printed out tab that you don't mind writing on, mark it up such that you can understand what the different sections are and what the different pieces are. Okay, I think I'm on to my fifth piece of advice now. So now you've started getting an understanding for the piece of music and you've broken it all down into little sections. Now's the time to start thinking about learning the piece of music, but don't start at the beginning. Okay, we get taught from a very early age at school when we read books that we start at the top and we work our way through. Now that's all very well and good when we're learning, a story and a piece of music. It makes sense. Obviously, it's got a linear process, and we need to go through it from start to end. And obviously, for the piece of music to make sense when we're performing it, clearly, that's what we've got to do. But when we're learning it, we need to think about the way our brain is going to work. Now, my advice would be start with the most complicated pieces first. You're going to have the most motivation for your piece of music and the most inspiration on day one. So start, arguably, with the most complicated part, okay, which generally speaking is often towards the end of the solo. It's the final flourishes. Okay, so put most of your effort and energy into that section. So break it down. We were talking earlier about how you've identified the riffs and the licks and all those bits and pieces. In sensible chunks, start with something logical that's the more technical part, and go slowly. And this is the great thing about using Guitar Pro, is you can slow the music right down, 25%, whatever it might be, and make sure that your fingers fall in the right place and fret the notes correctly right from the outset. That is your goal, is to make sure that your fingers deliberately, consciously and meaningfully go to the right place. The timing might not be right, might not sound very musical, but make sure that your fingers go correctly. And that's the other thing that's really important, is you need to think about your finger placement for the subsequent notes and bits and pieces coming up. So another reason to go slowly is to work out how you're going to transition from section to section, riff to riff, lick to lick, or whatever it might be. Okay, so start slowly and then work up. So that's about it. You're then into the sort of final phases. Once you've learned every little section, that's then the time to start putting it all together. But even then, you're still going to be going very slowly at this stage. So this is my sort of final piece of advice, is just think about the attitude and the approach towards the piece of music. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve something quick and easy that you can impress people with? You're going to fail, to be perfectly honest, on that. Much better to go slowly. Think of this as a project that's going to last possibly several days, several weeks, several months even, depending on how technical the piece of music it is. So it's going to be something that you're going to come back to little and often each day, chunk at a time, a bar at a time, slowly working, building yourself up and making sure that you are playing meaningfully and correctly, not absent-mindedly just thinking that your fingers will fall in the right place or it will somehow all happen by accident. You have to deliberately and consciously do it. Okay, well, I hope that's useful. I know sometimes it feels hard. It certainly did for me, but I've also found in recent years that following that approach and really taking a far more considered approach to the learning process has helped me no end. So let me know how you get on. You may have a different way of learning. If you've got different techniques, different ideas for how you learn tab, then let me know. Put them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Okay, take care, speak soon, and please, if you're not subscribed already, please do, and also get your friends to subscribe as well. The more subscribers I have, the more motivation I've got and the more reason I've got to make more videos and content. Okay, take care, see you soon.